My name is Emily Walker, and I used to believe that the darkest secrets lived only in movies. But sometimes the shadows find you in real life, on the quiet streets of an ordinary American suburb. It all started on a cold November morning in Cedar Grove, Ohio, a town where nothing ever seemed to happen, and where every neighbor still waved from their front porch. At that time, my world was simple: college classes, part-time shifts at the local cafe, and a new relationship with a sweet, loyal guy named Jason Miller. He was the sort of man who always remembered your favorite candy and left silly notes in your jacket pocket. I'd never met his father, but Jason talked about him often. "He's traditional, but not strict," he would say. My mom was the one who kept him balanced. Since she passed, he just keeps to himself. I never expected the man I'd heard so much about would change my life forever. Jason invited me to meet his dad for Thanksgiving dinner. He spent days hyping me up. "He'll love you. You make me happy. He just wants that for me." I tried to believe him, even though my stomach tied itself in knots on the drive to the Miller house. I wore my favorite blue sweater, the one my best friend said brought out my eyes. I rehearsed polite hellos and jokes, determined to win over the old-school father. The first thing I noticed when Richard Miller opened the door was how tired he looked, gray-haired to neat, a pressed shirt and slacks, like he was heading to church, not a family meal. He didn't smile, not really. His eyes moved over me, cold and appraising, like I was an object at an auction. "You're not what I pictured," he said, voice flat. He didn't shake my hand, didn't offer a seat. Jason stammered an introduction, but his father just walked away, leaving me standing in the entryway with my heart pounding. Dinner was a strange performance. Richard barely spoke to me, only to ask Jason about his classes or criticize the way he carved the turkey. I tried to make conversation, but each time I offered a compliment or a story, Richard cut me off or stared at me until I trailed into silence. I could see the frustration in Jason's face. He'd wanted this night to be perfect, for his family to accept me. Instead, there was only tension so thick you could slice it. Still, I tried. I took pictures of Jason and his dad, offered to clear plates, laughed at old family jokes. For a moment, I saw Richard smile at a photo of Jason as a toddler. But when I handed him a slice of pie, his face hardened again. I wondered what I'd done wrong, if I reminded him of something or someone he'd lost. That night, Jason apologized over and over. "I'm so sorry, he's complicated. Since my mom died, he's never really been the same. His mother, Linda, had died when Jason was 5, a car crash, quick and senseless. Jason barely remembered her, only fragments, the smell of her perfume, the sound of her humming in the kitchen, the way she called him sunshine. Richard never spoke about Linda, but he kept her wedding photo on the mantle, the two of them smiling in another lifetime. I tried to shake off the bad feeling, chalking it up to nerves. But later that night, as I tried to sleep in Jason's childhood room, I heard the floorboards creak outside my door. At first, I thought it was Jason, but he was still in the shower. Then the doorknob turned slowly, and someone slipped inside. I lay frozen, heart thumping. A shadow crossed the room, and I smelled alcohol and aftershave, sharp, sour, nothing like Jason. A hand touched my shoulder, rough and uncertain. "You look just like her," a voice whispered, Richard's voice, thick with grief and something darker. His hand lingered a second too long. I jerked away, panicked, and shouted for Jason. Everything after that happened in flashes. Jason's shout, Richard stumbling from the room, the door slamming shut. Jason locked us inside and held me as I shook. We didn't speak. We just listened to Richard's heavy steps pacing the hallway, then the sound of him slamming his own door. At dawn, we packed our bags and left without saying goodbye. Jason's hands shook as he drove back to my apartment. He apologized again and again, but I could see the shame burning in his eyes. He tried to call his dad, but Richard's phone rang unanswered. For days, I felt like a ghost in my own life. I checked the locks twice every night, jumped at every unknown number. Jason called his Aunt Nancy, who brushed it off. Richard's been struggling, dear. He loved your mother more than anything. It didn't make me feel better. A week later, a letter arrived in our mailbox. Richard's handwriting, shaky but careful. I'm sorry, the alcohol. It's not who I want to be. Please, just one more chance. Sunday dinner, no drinking, I promise. Jason begged me to go, to give his father a chance at redemption. I agreed, hoping things might change. Sunday came gray and rainy, as if the sky itself was warning me to stay away. But I went anyway, clinging to the hope that Richard Miller would prove he was more than his worst night. Jason was anxious the whole drive. He fiddled with the radio, avoided my eyes, and kept running through apologies as if he could will the past away. I tried to reassure him, but my stomach was knotted tight. Richard met us at the door, sober and solemn. He even managed a stiff smile as he handed me a mug of coffee, his hands shaking only a little. I appreciate you giving me another chance, he said quietly, not meeting my eyes. Jason hovered between us, nervous, desperate for things to be normal. Dinner was less tense, but the air still hummed with everything unspoken. Richard tried, asking about my family, my college plans, but every answer seemed to remind him of something painful. The only time he really softened was when Jason mentioned his mother. Linda's name hung in the air like a ghost. After dinner, Richard pulled out an old photo album, its corners worn, the leather soft from years of handling. He turned page after page, showing me faded photos of Linda. She was beautiful blonde hair, kind eyes, laughter frozen in every shot. There was one photo of her holding baby Jason, sunlight pouring through a window behind them. Richard stared at it for a long time before shutting the album. She was everything, he said softly, almost to himself. Losing her, nothing's been right since. His eyes glistened, and for the first time, I saw not just a difficult father, but a broken man clinging to memories that cut as much as they comforted. But underneath that sadness, something else flickered, a restlessness, a need to control the narrative. As we left, Richard pressed an envelope into my hand. I wrote Linda letters every week after she passed. I want you to have one. Maybe you'll understand. I nodded, unsure what to say in the car. I opened the letter. The handwriting was small and cramped, running off the edge of the page. Linda, you left me with questions no one can answer. I see you everywhere, in the music you loved, in the way Emily laughs, in every moment Jason grows further from me. You promised never to leave, but I was never enough to keep you safe. I won't lose you again, not even to time. The words unsettled me. Jason tried to laugh it off. My dad's just stuck in the past. He means well. But I felt a chill run down my spine. I tucked the letter away, telling myself I was being paranoid. That night, sleep was slow to come. Every sound seemed sharper, every shadow a threat. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. You don't know what really happened. The attic holds the truth. Trust your instincts. My skin prickled. I showed Jason, but he said it must be a prank, a wrong number. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching, that secrets were pressing in from all sides. The next day at the cafe, I found myself studying every customer, wondering if they knew something I didn't. At home, Jason scrolled through old family photos on his phone, zooming in on his mother's smile, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. Days blurred into weeks. Richard kept calling, sometimes leaving voicemails that rambled between apologies and old family stories. Once, he left a message at midnight, his voice breaking. I can't sleep. She's still here, you know? The house is full of her, Sometimes I think I see her in the hallway, just for a second." Jason started to pull away, quieter, haunted. He admitted he'd begun having nightmares about his childhood home, the attic, a locked door, Linda's voice calling from the other side. I tried to help, but he shut down, his grief mixing with shame. One afternoon, as winter crept into Cedar Grove, I came home to find Jason sitting in the dark, the attic key in his hand. He looked at me, hollow-eyed. "I need to know, I need to see what he's hiding up there." I hesitated, fear gnawing at me, but nodded. That evening, while Richard was at his AE meeting, we drove to the Miller house. The air inside was heavy with dust and memory. We crept up the narrow stairs, the house silent but for the creak of floorboards and the thudding of our hearts. Jason pulled down the attic ladder. The space above was cramped and hot, filled with boxes labeled in Linda's neat script. We rifled through stacks of old bills, faded holiday cards, baby shoes, until we found a box marked with just one word: accident. Inside were police reports, a death certificate, and a handful of newspaper clippings about Linda's crash. But there was more: a small diary, its lock broken, and a collection of surveillance photos, Linda in her car at the grocery store, picking Jason up from school. On the backs, dates and times in Richard's handwriting. My stomach twisted. He watched her, Jason whispered, voice shaking. "Even before she died." We found a cassette tape like a virgin crack down the middle, the one that had been playing when she crashed. Jason's hands shook as he held it, memories flooding his eyes. We heard the front door slam. Richard was home early. We barely had time to shove the boxes back when Richard's heavy steps echoed up the stairs. Jason squeezed my hand. I could feel his pulse racing. Richard appeared in the attic doorway, face red with anger, eyes wild. "What are you doing?" His voice was low, dangerous. Jason stood tall, blocking me. "Dad, we know about the diary, the photos. Why were you following, Mom?" Richard's anger flickered to panic, then hard sadness. She was slipping away. I needed to know where she went, who she saw. "That's not love," I said quietly. "That's obsession." Richard's face crumpled. "You don't understand. She was all I had left. I couldn't let her go, not again." The room was silent, save for the whirring attic fan and our ragged breathing. Jason held up the tape, his voice cracking. "You kept everything, even the song she died to." Richard reached for the tape, but Jason pulled away. "Did you follow her that day, Dad?" The question hung in the air, heavy as a stone. Richard's shoulders slumped. "I was just trying to talk to her. She drove away too fast. I never meant." He stopped, swallowing hard. Jason's eyes filled with tears. "She was leaving you. That's what the diary says. You chased her, didn't you?" Richard slumped onto a box, defeated. I thought if I could just see her, talk to her, she'd change her mind. She was my life. When she crashed, I lost everything. We left the attic in silence, boxes of secrets still trembling in our hands. Richard didn't follow us downstairs. Jason was shaking, but there was a strange peace in his face, a relief, finally knowing. Back at our apartment, we called the police, turning over the diary and the photos. The investigation was slow, old wounds reopening for everyone involved. Richard denied everything at first, then changed his story, then fell silent altogether. Jason started therapy. The nightmares faded, replaced by fragile hope. He found work in a new town, determined to rebuild on his own terms. I dyed my hair, cut it short, and started volunteering at the shelter, something that made me feel real again. Sometimes at night, Jason and I would listen to that cracked Madonna tape, not to relive the pain, but to remember we'd survived. A year later, Jason's father was sentenced not for murder, but for stalking, for tampering with evidence, for the damage done to everyone left behind. He sent one last letter from prison, a rambling apology, still full of excuses and ghosts. But we didn't read it. We had our own life, now sunlit rooms, dinners with friends, laughter returning piece by piece. I still think about Linda Miller sometimes. About all the women whose stories are twisted by those who claim to love them. But I know her son broke the cycle. He learned to love without possession, to let go when holding on only brought pain. If there's any lesson in what we survived, it's this. You can lose everything: your home, your illusions, even people you thought would never leave and still, somehow, start again. You can choose truth over comfort, freedom over fear. As the years pass, the pain softens, but the lessons remain. We are more than what others do to us. We are the stories we claim for ourselves, and the courage it takes to keep writing them.